The Miller family appeared to embody the essence of a modern fairy tale. Ethan and Claire had met during their college years. He was immersed in engineering studies, while she pursued political science. Their connection was instant, and their bond grew naturally, culminating in a simple yet heartfelt wedding. Over the years, they crafted a life many admired. Ethan, diligent and systematic, excelled as an engineering manager, while Claire, known for her intellect and charm, thrived as an assistant at a prestigious law firm. Their two children, Sophie and Daniel, brought additional color to their lives. At 16, Sophie was inquisitive and ambitious, with a passion for photography and dreams of exploring the world. 14-year-old Daniel, on the other hand, was more introverted but had a remarkable talent for illustrating comic books, something their parents enthusiastically supported. The Millers' daily lives revolved around the kids' activities. Sophie had soccer practices during the week, while Daniel participated in his school's art club. Ethan and Claire were ever present at games, school events, and art exhibitions. Weekends transformed their house into a sanctuary of joy, filled with laughter and bonding. Claire relished cooking, while Ethan enjoyed firing up the backyard grill. Together, they spent hours playing board games or binge-watching movies, creating memories that seemed, from an outsider's perspective, to epitomize happiness. Their modest yet inviting home reflected each family member's personality. Sophie's photos adorned the living room, Daniel's comics were neatly arranged on shelves, Ethan's work accolades were subtly displayed in the office, and fresh flowers Claire insisted on brightened the kitchen. Despite their busy routines, Ethan and Claire prioritized time as a couple. Monthly, they would step away for dinner at a local eatery or a peaceful stroll in the park. These outings reaffirmed the connection they had shared since the beginning. However, beneath the seemingly perfect exterior, cracks began to form. Claire, once vibrant and full of energy, grew more withdrawn. Her laughter became less frequent, and she spent more time in introspection, as though carrying an unseen burden. Ethan noticed her change in demeanor, but, being pragmatic, attributed it to exhaustion from her demanding job. Claire's role at the law firm had become increasingly stressful, with tight deadlines and challenging clients. Ethan faced mounting pressures at his own workplace, yet both appeared to navigate their struggles effectively. Even so, Claire's subtle behavioral shifts unsettled Ethan. She started dedicating more time to herself, purchasing new outfits, experimenting with hairstyles, and wearing perfume she hadn't used in years. Though tempted to comment, Ethan chose to stay silent, assuming she was simply boosting her confidence amidst work stress. The stability Ethan valued began to feel tenuous, as a vague sense of unease crept in, a shadow on the horizon, not yet a storm, but impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, the atmosphere at Claire's workplace underwent a shift with the arrival of a new colleague, Ryan. He was charismatic and confident, the kind of person who naturally commanded attention. Ryan had been hired as a corporate litigation attorney with a reputation for excelling in high-stakes cases preceding him. His relaxed demeanor and sharp wit stood out in the otherwise formal office environment, quickly winning him favor among his peers, including Claire. Initially, Ryan seemed innocuous. Claire occasionally mentioned him at home, noting his ability to lighten tense meetings or his knack for navigating complex scenarios. Ethan paid little mind, viewing Ryan as a harmless workplace distraction for Claire. However, over time, Ryan's name surfaced more frequently in their conversations, not excessively, but enough for Ethan to take notice. Claire also began to make subtle changes, dressing more stylishly for work, trying new hairstyles, and using a perfume she rarely wore. When Ethan joked about her polished look, she smiled shyly and brushed it off, changing the subject. Though he tried to dismiss his concerns, a nagging feeling lingered. Ryan, for his part, seemed acutely aware of his impact. He had a knack for offering well-timed compliments and carefully chosen remarks that flattered. His attentiveness toward Claire became evident. He brought her coffee during meetings, praised her contributions to the team, and occasionally dropped flirtatious comments that made her laugh, albeit uneasily. While Claire showed no outward signs of reciprocating, she didn't entirely dismiss his attention. One Friday evening, Claire brought up a work retreat during dinner. It's supposed to help with team bonding and strategizing, she explained. Ethan frowned. A retreat? What kind of retreat? Claire elaborated, mentioning that Ryan was one of the organizers, though she spoke casually, as if it were just another work obligation. Ethan disliked the idea, but knew he couldn't stop her. When he questioned if her attendance was necessary, Claire grew defensive, assuring him it was nothing to worry about. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of unease. What troubled him most was how she leapt to Ryan's defense whenever his name came up. Once, Ethan remarked that Ryan seemed overconfident based on her descriptions. Claire immediately countered, "He's just self-assured. There's nothing wrong with that. He's excellent at his job." Her quick defense left Ethan questioning whether he was overreacting or if there was more to the situation than he realized. As the retreat approached, Ethan's unease deepened. Claire's excitement about the event, her bright smiles and eager packing, was unlike her usual response to work functions. Though he wanted to trust her, a persistent voice in his mind warned him something was off. The retreat took place at an upscale resort nestled in the mountains, offering a tranquil escape. Claire texted Ethan upon arrival, assuring him all was well and that she'd be occupied with meetings. Ethan's brief "have fun" reply masked his growing anxiety. At the resort, Claire felt a mix of liberation and apprehension. The change in scenery brought a sense of freedom, but Ryan's attention continued to intensify. During one group activity, he leaned toward her and said softly, "You're the most fascinating person here." Caught off guard, Claire laughed nervously and shifted the conversation. Still, she felt her cheeks flush. That evening, after dinner with colleagues, Ryan suggested a chat at the bar. He expressed admiration for her work ethic and shared ideas for improving the firm's operations. Though hesitant, Claire agreed, convincing herself it was purely professional. Meanwhile, Ethan sent her a message asking about her day. Claire replied quickly, saying everything was fine but omitting any mention of Ryan. Their conversation at the bar started innocently enough, with Ryan sharing stories from his career. His humor and charm were undeniable, and Claire found herself captivated. Then, leaning in slightly, he murmured, "You're unlike anyone I've ever met. It's hard not to notice." Stunned, Claire hesitated. She recognized he was crossing a line, but couldn't ignore the way his attention made her feel, alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. The next morning, Ethan tried calling Claire, but she didn't answer. Assuming she was busy, he tried not to read into it, though her silence gnawed at him. When they finally spoke later, the call was brief and strained. Claire sounded distracted, heightening Ethan's suspicion that she was withholding something. On the retreat's final day, during a meeting on the resort's terrace, Ryan made a bold remark in front of their colleagues. "Let's hope our star, Claire, continues to inspire us with her brilliance," he said, his gaze lingering on her. While others laughed, Claire felt a wave of embarrassment. Ryan was testing limits, and she knew his actions could jeopardize her reputation. When Claire returned home, Ethan sensed her distance immediately. Her responses to his questions about the retreat were vague, avoiding specifics. Though she tried to appear normal, Ethan detected unspoken truths beneath her words. An argument erupted later, spurred by Ethan's growing concerns. In the heat of the moment, Claire made a shocking admission. "Maybe spending one night with Ryan would end this tension and let me move on." Her words left Ethan speechless. He stared at her, unable to comprehend how she could suggest such a thing. "That's your solution?" he asked, his voice trembling with hurt. "You think honesty makes this acceptable?" Claire defended herself, claiming transparency was better than deceit. To Ethan, it was no justification. It was a betrayal he never anticipated. Without another word, he left the room, packed a suitcase, and said coldly, "If that's what you believe, good luck. I'm not staying for this." He walked out, leaving Claire stunned and questioning how their marriage had unraveled so drastically. Ethan drove aimlessly through the night, trying to process the enormity of what had happened. Ethan had 2 children who deserved answers. When he arrived home, he noticed Claire's car wasn't in the driveway. He checked the clock on the dashboard. It was past midnight. Entering the silent house, the weight of the stillness settled heavily on him. Sophie and Daniel were likely asleep. He resolved to have the difficult conversation with them the following morning. The next day, despite barely sleeping, Ethan was up early. He made himself a strong cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table waiting for the kids to wake up. Daniel was the first to appear, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Dad, you're home. Where's Mom?" he asked. Ethan took a steadying breath. "Daniel, we need to talk. Can you get your sister, please?" A few minutes later, Sophie came downstairs. The serious look on her father's face made her pause. "What's going on? Why are you here so early?" Ethan motioned for them to sit. "This isn't easy, but I need to tell you something," he began. He explained carefully that he and their mother were going through a difficult time, mentioning that Claire had made choices that affected the family. He avoided sharing explicit details, but didn't downplay the gravity of the situation. Sophie interrupted, her voice worried. "Is she okay? Where is she?" "She's fine physically," Ethan assured her. "But she decided to spend some time away." Daniel, clearly confused, asked, "Is she coming back?" Ethan looked at both of them, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "I hope so, but I can't say for sure. What matters right now is that we stay united." Meanwhile, Claire had decided to follow through with her impulsive plan. She met Ryan at a hotel, hoping it would help her untangle her conflicted emotions. However, during their time together, she realized how superficial their connection truly was. Ryan seemed far more invested in the thrill of the chase than in understanding her as a person. The encounter left her feeling hollow and full of regret. She abruptly left Ryan and drove home, tears streaming down her face as the enormity of her actions weighed on her. When Claire arrived, the house was silent. She stepped inside and found Ethan in the living room, reading a book. He looked up when he heard the door, his expression cold and distant. "You came back," he said flatly. Claire nodded, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." Before they could continue, Sophie and Daniel appeared at the top of the stairs. Sophie crossed her arms, her face reflecting disappointment. "Mom, where were you?" she demanded. Claire felt the crushing weight of her guilt. "I had some things I needed to sort out," she said softly. Daniel looked at his dad, confusion clouding his expression. "Why won't anyone tell us what's going on?" Ethan stood. "Maybe it's time we have this talk as a family," he said. They all sat in the living room, the tension palpable. Claire tried to explain, choosing her words carefully. "I made a mistake," she admitted. "I let my emotions lead me to do something I shouldn't have. I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused." Sophie shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "How could you do this to us? I thought we were a close family." Daniel stayed quiet, but the sadness and confusion in his eyes spoke volumes. Ethan stepped in. "What matters now is figuring out how we move forward. Trust has been broken, and that doesn't get fixed overnight." Claire turned to him, her voice filled with desperation. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I love all of you more than anything." The days that followed were strained and awkward. Claire tried to return to a normal routine, but the atmosphere in the house was heavy. Sophie distanced herself, spending more time out with friends or locked in her room. Daniel retreated into his drawings, avoiding meaningful conversations. Ethan remained polite, but emotionally detached, keeping his interactions with Claire to a minimum. Claire, feeling like an outsider in her own home, tried to bridge the gap. She made special dinners and planned family activities, but participation felt forced with little enthusiasm. One afternoon, Claire approached Sophie in her room. "Can we talk?" Claire asked tentatively. Without looking up, Sophie sighed. "About what?" Claire sat on the edge of her bed. "I know you're hurt, and you have every reason to be. I just want you to know I'm here for you." Sophie finally turned to look at her mother, her voice full of pain. "How am I supposed to trust you again? You broke us." Tears rolled down Claire's cheeks. "I know, and I regret it every day. I'm getting help to understand why I did this. I want us to work through this together." Sophie stared out the window, silent, desperate to reconnect with Ethan. Claire suggested couples therapy. Ethan hesitated, but ultimately agreed to try. Their sessions unearthed deep-seated resentment, unmet expectations, and the emotional distance that had grown between them over the years. Family therapy followed, where Daniel expressed his fear that his parents would separate, and Sophie admitted she felt betrayed and now doubted her ability to trust others in relationships. Ethan and Claire vowed to be more transparent and engaged with their children. Despite their efforts, progress was slow and uneven. Some days brought glimmers of hope, others reopened old wounds. Claire knew rebuilding trust required consistency, patience, and time. One evening, while the family sat in the living room, she suggested watching a movie they used to enjoy together. There was hesitation, but eventually they all settled in. By the end of the film, there were small smiles and bits of laughter, a faint reminder of the harmony they once shared. It was a small step, but it carried a sense of hope. Weeks turned into months, and the tension in the Miller home remained palpable. Claire persisted in her attempts to mend the relationships, attending therapy, reading books on family dynamics, and participating in workshops. Yet every effort seemed to meet a wall of distrust. Ethan continued to fulfill his roles as a father and husband with mechanical precision, but his emotional connection to Claire felt severed. One day, while sorting through old papers in the home office, Claire found an envelope buried among the files. Inside were letters Ethan had written during the early years of their marriage. They spoke of his dreams, their plans for the future, and his unwavering belief in their love. As she read, tears fell freely. The letters reminded her of how far she had strayed from the foundation they had built together. Determined to make one last effort, Claire decided to write Ethan a letter of her own. She spent days reflecting on their shared memories and crafting her words with care, pouring out her remorse and her hope for reconciliation. When it was finished, she left it on Ethan's desk without a word. The next morning, Ethan found the letter. Sitting down quietly, he read it, his face unreadable as he took in every line. Claire's words were raw and heartfelt, reminding him of the passionate woman he had fallen in love with. Yet the hurt ran deep, and he wasn't sure if he could meet her halfway. That evening during dinner, Ethan finally broke the silence. "I read your letter," he said, not meeting Claire's eyes. Claire swallowed hard. "And?" she asked, her voice shaky. Ethan sighed deeply. "It was honest, and I appreciate that. But words alone aren't enough to fix this." Fighting back tears, Claire nodded. "I understand, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Just tell me how I can prove I mean it." Before Ethan could respond, Sophie spoke. "Mom, I know you're trying, but this isn't just about Dad. You hurt all of us, and it's going to take time." Daniel, who had been quiet, finally said, "I just want us to be a family again, but I don't know if we can." Their words cut deeply, but Claire recognized their truth. Ethan looked at his children, his expression softening. "I want us to be a family too," he said, "but it's going to take effort from all of us." In the following days, Ethan began showing small signs of thawing. Conversations with Claire grew longer and more genuine, and the family started to recall happier memories together. Sophie and Daniel began letting their guard down, allowing Claire to reconnect with them slowly. The turning point came during a family dinner when the doorbell rang. Ethan answered it to find Ryan standing there, visibly uncomfortable and holding an envelope. "I need to talk to Claire," Ryan said, ignoring Ethan. Claire went pale. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" Ryan hesitated before speaking. "I've realized I was wrong to cross the line. You deserve to hear that from me. I regret the role I played in all of this." He handed Claire the envelope. "These are the messages we exchanged. I want you to have them so there's no doubt about my intentions to make things right." Turning to Ethan, he added, "I hope you can forgive her. She deserves a second chance." After Ryan left, Ethan returned to the living room. Claire sat curled up on the couch, staring at the floor. He sat beside her and, after a moment, said, "This doesn't fix everything, but it's a step." Surprised, Claire looked at him. "Do you think we can rebuild?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I think we can try, but we all have to commit to it." That night, the Miller family began taking real steps toward healing, learning that forgiveness is a long and challenging road, but sometimes the only way forward.